this computer. Hello.
Hello, Jacqui.
Hello. Well, hello, everybody. This is the third in the series called Questions on My Mind, where I talk to people about all things mind, body, and soul. I've done two previously, which were more on the soul side of things, but today we're bringing it to the more body side of things. And most importantly, women's health is what we're talking about today. And I've got the absolute genius with me, Liz Sargent, who I've worked with myself. Liz, if you want to say a few things about yourself and what you do, that would be great. And then we can dive into the juicy conversation.
Yay, I'm excited to dive into everything. So thank you, Jacqui, and thank you for inviting me. So I am Liz Sargent. I'm a functional health practitioner and women's health specialist. So I am based here in the UK, but myself and my team, we work with women all over the world. And we are absolutely passionate about women's health and hormones. So focusing on energy, what lights us up and what makes us shine, and then our hormonal base beats, you know, bringing us back into conversation, into alignment, into attunement with what our incredible hormones are doing on a daily basis, on a monthly basis, and how they change as we move through our lives.
Yeah, and I know you've got loads of different ways of working with you, which we can sort of circle around to at the end, because there's loads of stuff that they do that's absolutely brilliant. I'll be looking down a little bit because I've got a few questions here which will inform the conversation. So let's just dive straight in and see how we get on. One of the things that's always interested me is around the whole women's cycling and why we all experience the similar or the same sort of PMS type symptoms and things like that, and whether that's normal.
That's a great question. I love it. So yeah, so what's really interesting when it comes to things like PMS, though, PMS, I'm kind of talking around heavy periods, painful periods, low mood, irritability, headaches, acne, anxiety, you know, the list can go on and it can be really broad because it varies so much from person to person. Now, the thing about PMS is that they are very common. As you said, a lot of women experience PMS, but it's not biologically normal. So we should not be experiencing so many of those symptoms that we expect to be normal, because our friend has them, our neighbor has them. I've always had them. I've always suffered with headaches, or I've always suffered with mood swings, or I've always suffered with heavy periods. What's remarkable about the female body is every month we have this highly sensitive barometer of health. So every month in our monthly cycle, if there's something that's out of alignment, there's some imbalance in the body, it's expressed in our menstrual cycle. So it's expressed as PMS. So a lot of the PMS symptoms, when we start listening to our body and actually giving it what it needs. So for some women, that might be around, changing the foods that they're eating. You know, our typical Western diet is very heavy in processed carbohydrates and sugars. So it's not very friendly on our blood sugar balance. So actually just focusing on blood sugar balance for a lot of women is a complete game changer with regards to PMS. It will just disappear often in the course of 1 month. So there's a lot we can do at our fingertips when we just stop and think, hang on a second, what's going on? Why am I experiencing these symptoms? What is my body trying to tell me? And I think the one of the challenges is for a lot of the women that I work with, and I know these are your clients as well, are high achieving women. You know, they're in executive type positions and they've gone through life very driven and go, go, go. And in that go, 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 and this is also a societal thing, we kind of switch off to what our body needs. We don't listen to its whispers, because for a lot of women, quite often when we get into our, there might be niggles in our 20s, but we can flex it, we can party, we can deal with it, the hangover's not so bad. In our 30s, our body might shout a bit louder, the period pain might be a little bit more, or the headache's a bit more intense, but we're busy, we've got stuff to do, we don't have time for these headaches or these period pains. We'll pop some painkillers. Exactly. And slowly it catches up with us. We need to be starting to think, if I've got this PMS, actually, what is wrong? What can I do? And often it's small tweaks. What can I do to make life easier for myself, frankly? Why actually put up with it when we don't need to? So I can help myself now and actually put myself in a much stronger position. And it's that constant driving and striving and achieving that takes us out of connection with our body, with our hormones and our natural rhythms.
So then historically, say back before women were in the workplace, I know it's difficult to go back historically, we don't necessarily know fully, but it sounds like we weren't as driven as we are now. We weren't as in our masculine energy as we were now. So is it likely that historically we didn't have as much of these sorts of PMS type symptoms and things?
Yes, that's a good question. So there's a few different things going on there. So looking at PMS historically, I know from a cultural perspective, in some countries PMS doesn't really exist. It's not acknowledged, and when you do the surveys and it lists the symptoms, it's actually very few women experience it. In other countries, it's significantly higher. And again, a lot of that might come down to lifestyle. A lot will come down to diet. I think, so you can look at the time now and like how that, in different cultures, how it presents. Historically, it's difficult to look back historically. I think there's obviously a lot more awareness around things now. Recently, we've, in the last 40 years, we've been through a chemical revolution. So no point in history are we exposed to so many environmental toxins, whether that's plastics, Teflon pans, we're cooking in Teflon pans, flame retardants, agri-chemicals, skincare products. At no point in history have we had an onslaught of so many things, and we've not evolved fast enough to be able to deal with those. And all of those chemicals are dealt with through the same systems as our hormones are dealt with internally, through the liver. But obviously our bodies are going to prioritize the toxins, and alcohol actually would be classed as that. And if you use alcohol as an example, our body's not going to allow alcohol to keep circulating around, because we would become poorly of alcohol poisoning. So it's going to prioritize detoxing that first, versus say estrogen. You're not going to die of estrogen excess. It's just going to make you feel pretty horrendous. So so back to your question, I don't necessarily think women, but there is a cultural thing around being in that dominant masculine energy, around striving, controlling. Now in culture, women take on a lot of responsibility around the home as well as being in the workplace. Quite often the workplace environment isn't designed for women, because historically it would be majority of the men going into that workplace, and the 9-to-5 day, the same thing happening every single day of the month, of the year, is designed in that way, because that's historically how it is. And then we've kind of turned up and, in the 80s in our power suits, pretended to be little men powering a million miles an hour, saying we can do this too, and we can do everything at home. And we're like juggling, elderly parents, our parents, and maybe our husband's parents as well, and all the different things, right? So we are incredible in our masculine energy, because we don't have time for that feminine energy. We don't have time for leaning back and the nurturing ourselves. So there is a dichotomy, you know, from that perspective going on. Yeah, and obviously that has changed. You know, if you look at, you know, the role of men and women in history, and even the way we live, we would have lived in smaller villages, depending on how far back you go, right? We would have been other people in the village, elders, to help with childcare. You know, we might go out and work in the fields, or we might go out and work wherever it is. But the roles were different, and, you know, I'm not saying it was easier or it's now harder. I think it's just, obviously things have changed.
Yeah.
And when it comes down to it, is, you know, a lot of women are juggling a lot of stuff and taking on a lot of responsibility, and that over time, so probably through your 30s and 40s, just ramps up, you know, as you start, you know, you get to a point in your career where you're in a senior leadership position. You're having kids, so people are having babies later, maybe in their kind of mid to late 30s. Hormones are starting to change under the surface, you know, so you've got these sleepless nights, you're at a pinnacle point in your career, you're taking on more responsibility at home, you know, then you continue, the kids get to teenagers, your parents are becoming elderly. There's more and more responsibility, which slowly is wearing down resilience. So that's then when you wear down resilience, you know, stress heightens so many of these symptoms as well. So I think there's a lot of things going on, which, yeah, historically to that magnitude probably wouldn't have been happening. You know, there would have been other threats and worries in your life, but there were also different support systems in place.
Yeah. And we all, like you say, we used to have these smaller villages and extended families and that kind of thing, whereas now you could be not even living close to your parents, and it might just be you and your husband or partner living somewhere where you don't have the support with, even with childcare, to maybe go off and do something different or have some space to yourself, because you don't have people to call on.
Yeah.
Okay, that sounds like, I don't want to say insurmountable problem, but it's the world we live in. So what can we do about it?
So I think a huge question. So I think, first of all, there's a few different pieces we need to look at. So first of all, there's the identity that's wrapped up in the dominant masculine energy. So if we're talking about that side of things, so our thoughts, feelings, and beliefs are just biochemical reactions within us. So if we are consciously living in a dominant masculine energy, and when I say, you know, masculine and feminine energy, each and every one of us, whether a male or female, have that within us at different balance. Okay, masculine energy is awesome, it gets stuff done, it's very strategic, we need it, we love it. When it becomes dominant, when we're driving in that energy all the time, those thoughts, feelings, beliefs, and identity gets wrapped up in that. So those biochemical reactions around that create stress reactions in the body that then obviously influences all of those different hormonal channels. You know, all of these channels within our body are just interlinked. So if you're stressed, it will knock out your you know, your thyroid channel or your metabolism, you know, your channel down to your ovaries. They're all on the set, similar, either the same channel. So like your adrenals is on the set, like on a parallel channel to your ovaries, for example. So one thing is understanding and starting to address the identity and being able to relinquish some of the control. And a lot of it comes down to control, because we're in control of it in work. So like, we're on top of our game, we're leading teams, we know what our vision is, we're in control of situations at home. So juggling childcare, you might even have a nanny, you know, so you know what your nanny's doing, but then there'll be guilt that comes in with that. There might be guilt when something happens, you're not able to turn up quite as strongly at work, or you're feeling fatigued and hormones are holding you back from what you can do at work. So we get into this vicious cycle. So starting to work on that identity piece and allow yourself to release, relinquish some control and trust that it's not all going to come crumbling down, would be, I'm using control as an example because that is so common across so many women that I work with, and I know you do as well. So that's, you know, that's a really good one. When we can start to relinquish some of that control, that can be a huge kind of breath of relief for so many women, and any guilt that's wrapped up in that. The next space would be where you can support yourself from a, what I call silent stressors perspective. There's a lot that we can do, or there's a lot that we kind of do to ourselves that's causing stress within the body. So either that's if we're exercising, it can be over exercising, it could be exercising at the wrong time of day. So I know a lot of women exercise early in the morning before they get stuff done, but if we're in a stressed state, that will be making things significantly worse. And you'll know that if you feel, you might feel kind of great after the exercise, but later on in the day, you're feeling really fatigued, you're flagging, or you struggle with blood sugar crashes. So that's like a good thing just to tune into. We have blood sugar imbalance. And this is a huge silent stressor that I see in women. And we might even be eating healthy. So you might be having oatmeal, so porridge for breakfast, or yogurt and granola for breakfast, and like, you know, a reasonable, like a sandwich for lunch and then something for dinner. But actually those foods will be causing blood sugar imbalances. Every time you get this spike in your blood sugar and it crashes, it causes stress response in the body.
Yeah.
So when we start to tune into what's going on from a blood glucose perspective and kind of making a calmer blood glucose kind of graph, I use continuous blood glucose monitors a lot with my clients. So we get that real-time result. Again, we're taking a stress off the system. And that is, you know, then that's one of the easiest ways to take stress off the system, because cumulatively over time, being either in a state of stress every day and your energy, you know, when you've got your blood sugar going like this, your energy is going to feel horrendous at the end of the day. And your sleep quality will not be in a great space. So you're slowly moving away from health versus having a nice balanced blood glucose. You're moving towards health. You're moving towards vitality and being focused, being switched on, you know, all those sides of things. So there's a two-pronged approach where you're working on your emotional self and identity, and then your physical self. There's obviously loads of physical self stuff you can work on, but that is an example that I see pretty much in everyone, whether they're eating healthy or you are the go woman doing everything and actually you don't have time for food. You know, then that's huge alarm bells, right? That's huge alarm bells. If you don't even have the time to nurture yourself with the biochemistry, which is what food is at the end of the day, yeah, we love it, we enjoy it, we have emotional attachment to it, but as soon as it goes into your mouth, you chew it and you start to digest it, it's just biochemistry. And that biochemistry is what's making you thrive or not thrive. So, you know, if we don't nourish ourselves in the simplest of ways and give ourselves what we need, we're never going to be, you know, we're not setting ourselves up for success, basically. So you've got the two angles.
See, I've been guilty of that in a lot in the past, and it's not, so these things like I don't know, the instant porridges and stuff, you want to sort of get to the gym, you've got all this pressure to be slim, to be attractive, to be on top of everything, to be this kind of superwoman type thing. And in order to do that, you don't think about making yourself a healthy breakfast that's got the protein and the fats, and that takes too long. I just want to grab something that's grab and go or that's quick to do. So I used to just have toast and a cup of tea or something. There's not really any nutrition as such in that. And we don't really realize that we're doing that we're depleting ourselves. Because we just literally do not have time to think, or we tell ourselves, I don't have time to prepare a breakfast of the sort that you would advocate, which would be the avocado and eggs and, you know, special breads and all that kind of stuff, you'd think, I haven't got time for that. I think it's more of a retraining the brain to, what's the word? Convince yourself that you either spend the time now to balance these things, or you just have more imbalance later.
Yeah. And also even on a day-to-day basis. So as soon as you start making good choices, so much time and space opens up. So if you imagine when, I mean, you might be able to get away with it in your early 20s. So, you know, if you're listening in your early 20s, like, it's fine, I feel great. And I grab a cereal bar on my way to work and drink a Diet Coke and a coffee before 10 o'clock, you know, super. But just start being a little bit more self-aware. But as we move forward, actually, when you're moving through all this and you're feeling fatigued, you've not got clarity of mind, you're waking up tired, actually looking for something else for breakfast feels even more difficult, doesn't it? But actually what you need to be doing is initially at least a week of self-parenting of, actually, I'm going to make it simple. I'm just going to have boiled eggs every day for breakfast. I know you'll be like, what? Or I'm going to have scrambled egg. You know, scrambled egg literally takes 90 seconds. I've timed it. You know, scrambled egg takes 9 seconds. Or have smoked salmon on a seed cracker with avocado. Again, you know, that is just taking it out of a packet like you would do breakfast cereal. Just a little bit of thought, because in doing that, you're setting yourself up for success for the rest of the day. And the cumulative effect of that is that brain fog and that fatigue lifts. And it does pretty quickly. In which case, then suddenly you get so much more time in your day, because you can suddenly focus. You're not spending time in your day going, oh God, what was it I was going to do again? And then just a bit of procrastination and just like, oh, dragging yourself. Suddenly you're like, fab, okay, I've got this, okay, I'm going to do that. And then suddenly you're kind of even more on it, but not in a destructive way, not in a way that's not helpful, in an intentional way. So then it's like so much easier to think, you know, breakfast is my staple. You know, one of my clients recently said, you know, now success is how I feel in myself. You know, she's got she works in a consulting position in a company and is also setting up her own business as well. And now she's like, success to me is how I feel in myself, because suddenly she's got boundless energy. You know, suddenly she is switched on. She's making moves at work. Her leadership has just gone to a next level because she has that energy and that clarity and that motivation. She's not like dragging herself, you know, anymore, putting up with various symptoms that she was experiencing at different times in the month. So then our priorities shift, and actually making a breakfast, whether it's super simple, like 2 boiled eggs, which when I was commuting, when I had my corporate job, when I was consulting, I would, you know, quite often, if it was a busy morning, just take 3 boiled eggs with me and a banana and some tomatoes. It doesn't sound sexy, but it's highly nutritious and it sets me up for the day. Other days when I had a little bit more time, I might, you know, make something a little bit fancier. But also we can spend a couple of, well, not even a couple of hours, like 20 minutes at the weekend making a chia seed pudding. Make it in a big jar, put it into another container to take with you. It's not difficult and it's not rocket science. At the beginning, it might be just putting a few strategies in place to help yourself. But, you know, it's a difference between, you know, night and day, really.
So I'm looking back, and my 20-year-old self would just be sort of like, yeah, whatever. And it will probably just come back to haunt me a little bit later on. Well, it has come back to haunt me. So I do anticipate that because you're in a different mindset when you're in your 20s, that this might not land with some of the women who are in that phase of their life. But honestly, I implore you, if you start working on this now, you're going to have a bit of an easier ride, just generally in your cycle, but also when you start to go into perimenopause, which I'm coming on to now, it will hopefully make that a bit easier as well, because you're not going into it so unbalanced.
Yeah, definitely. And I think when you're in your 20s and 30s, I think firstly, just tune into what's happening in your cycle each month. So if you're experiencing any of those symptoms, you know, making simple dietary changes is going to lift those symptoms really quickly. For most people, you know, depending on what's going on, there may be a few of the little bits that need to have more of a fine tuning, but for most people that will lift those really simply. So actually, if you don't want to, you know, feel however you feel at certain times of the month, just do something about it. And then really at that point, and this goes for anyone wherever you are in your life course, is to start tracking and tuning into your cycle on a daily basis. Either use one of the apps, there's plenty of apps where you can do tracking, or just write it in your diary, like what day of your cycle are you on, to get to know, like day 1 is the first day of your main bleed, and then say, like, how do I feel on this day? Where's my mood? Where's my energy? Just start becoming aware of how of your cycle and how your body ebbs and flows at different times in your cycle, because then you can start being really strategic with the different types of workouts you do. What's going on with your metabolism? You know, you mentioned body shape. You know, our need for carbohydrates and proteins change at different times in our cycle. So if we start to just allow ourselves to listen and ebb and flow, it gets so much easier. Just generally life gets so much easier. And then obviously you're setting yourself up for the future as well. We're just coming back into conversation with our body and understanding her cues.
Okay. So say I've ignored everything you've said and I've gone through, you know, my 20s and 30s with the coffees and going for long periods without eating, really pushing myself at the gym and all that kind of stuff. And I'm now going into perimenopause. How different is that likely to be from if I was going in a balanced state? So almost what's the ideal sort of perimenopause look like, and what does it normally look like now?
Okay, right. So I guess there isn't really an ideal perimenopause, because it does vary so much from person to person. It will be influenced somewhat by genetics and obviously somewhat by environmental. And when I talk environmental, that does include stress. It includes how you've led yourself in the past, how you lead yourself currently, you know, where your resilience is, or there's, you know, so by the time we get to perimenopause, there's so many things that have influenced our life course, you know, even looking at childhood traumas, you know, and how they then influence us at that point in life. So there isn't like a normal, a typical, but there is a way that we can set ourselves up for potentially a smoother ride in the run up to it. And even when we get there. So I think one of the things is, it's amazing that there's so much awareness around perimenopause and menopause now, and options that are available. But I think, so we're not getting there and then stumbling over and like just face planting into it and feeling horrendous. We have an awareness of what's going on. But at the same time, it's important to have awareness. There's a lot we can do to support ourselves through that phase. And that is, you know, in stress management, in blood glucose, you know, being on top of like actually what are your blood markers with regards to nutrient levels? What's your gut health doing? There's quite a few things that you can do to support yourself through perimenopause and your experience of it, you know, what those symptoms are. So, and actually it's important also to note that, you know, 70% of the population, this is reported by the Menopause Society, 70% of the population will move through perimenopause with either no symptoms or very few symptoms. Yeah, and you look surprised.
That's quite high.
Yes, exactly, because what we hear in the media and what for most women is set up as good luck when you get to that age because it's going to be horrendous. Well, actually, the majority of women, it's not a horrendous journey. For 30%, you'll have moderate to severe symptoms. And, again, that can be based on genetics, but a lot, the major, this isn't anything, there's genetics, but it's actually the expression of those genes, and it's the environment that leads to the expression of those genes. So, if you have a poor diet, if you are swamped by stress, if you have poor sleep quality, all of these different things are going to be making that environment not favorable for you. But yeah, it's actually, most women won't have a horrendous journey through perimenopause. And that can be improved if we, the odds of that can be improved if we, look after ourselves as we move through that and make some changes. And then obviously we have HRT that is available, if and when we need it. It's absolutely great, but there's a lot we can do before we get to that point. And HRT can be something, if we want to add it in later, we can do, but there's a lot we can do potentially before we get there.
And that's an interesting one, because HRT was in vogue and then it went out of vogue and now it's back in vogue. So for women, I think this is one of my questions, who kind of, like I say, missed the opportunity to kind of really look after themselves before they were going into perimenopause. They've now got quite a few symptoms, and the first thing they think of is going to get HRT. What would you say to that?
So first of all, the vogue and in vogue. So the old version of HRT was a very different type of HRT to what you have now. So that fell out of vogue because of the issues that were associated with that type of HRT. That's not the HRT you would be offered now. So you can't really compare the previous version and, what was publicized at that time versus what you are now. So I just want to sort of set that clear to anyone who is worrying about that. Yeah. The second thing is, if you're not coping because of how you've led yourself to this point, and also, give yourself grace. You've led yourself to this point and you've kept yourself safe. You have made yourself successful. You have done the best you can by yourself to this point. So it's no like, oh my God, I'm struggling like this because of what I've done. Is absolutely not. Celebrate where you've got to. The important thing is now it's like having that awareness around, I can actually now really step in and support myself. Okay. So if you're really not coping, then HRT is going to be an option to support you in being able to cope in life. I would recommend, if you go down that route, you speak to your doctor about HRT, is still work on all the other stuff, right? Because that kind of ball of inflammation or imbalance is still going to be there under the surface, right? And it's doesn't just affect hormones. That's just how we're experiencing it. It will be affecting other systems. So for longevity and overall health, HRT will support you, but then really do focus in on, gut health, blood glucose balance, the foods that you're putting on your plate, are they nutrient dense? Stress management, and all of those pieces are so important, and the right kind of movement. So I'd say if you get to that point and you're not coping, HRT is a great option, but still look after yourself. If you get to that point and you're starting to notice symptoms, and fine, but they're just really inconvenient at certain times of the month, doesn't matter that you've led yourself to that point. You've not missed the boat. There's so much you can do in this moment right now to lift a lot of those symptoms and change your experience of perimenopause as you continue to move through it. So it's not that you've missed the boat. It's actually this a great awareness now that I can do something about it.
Okay. Something I was thinking about with HRT. Yes. So is the different HRT that you're talking about, is it now the bioidentical stuff that's available now, even if you went through your GP?
Yeah, so pretty much all HRT that's available for your GP is bioidentical. Yeah.
Okay. So if a woman is suffering with perimenopause symptoms now, though, what's the first thing she should look into?
So I think your lowest hanging fruit is blood glucose, because you can instantly change the food that you're putting on your plate. Whether you use we use continuous blood glucose monitors, because you can just see there in real time, you know, how your body's responding to things and make instant changes. Before they weren't available, we didn't use blood glucose monitors, and we would do it based on changing things in your diet, you know, putting in more fats and proteins, taking out sugar and refined carbohydrates, replacing those with kind of your root shoots and fruits. But fats and proteins are really a base beat for, you know, your female diet, and you know, making those changes, because that will make a significant difference. There are foods that you can add in that support with hormonal balance. So you've got all your cruciferous vegetables, so your cauliflower, broccoli, pak choy, rocket, your sulfur-containing vegetables, so like leeks, onions, garlic. They all really support those hormone metabolism pathways, and they support like the detoxification pathways. So adding in loads of those. Phytoestrogens can be really helpful. So that's flax seeds, edamame beans. They're also really helpful. And you can eat these at different times in your cycle to help alleviate or ease symptoms. So I would focus on that, because that's a really low hanging fruit. I would also see where you've got energy leaks, is what I call them. So where are you giving your energy away? So like different stressors that come up in your day, start to look at those and allow yourself moments where your nervous system can feel safe. So whether that's doing some breath work, doing easy movement like yoga, just allowing yourself to have 5 minutes, just mindful time. You know, there's different ways we can do it. Going out in nature is really important. Obviously movement is important, but not kind of excessive. You know, just tune into what feels good for your body. And then sleep hygiene. So blue light in the afternoon, evening can really influence your sleep quality overnight. So being mindful of that. And then just having that good routine, and actually daylight first thing in the morning. So as soon as you can get up, you know, either get outside or get right close to the window for like 20 minutes or so. And that just resets that circadian rhythm that has then a cascade effect on where your hormones are.
Okay. And then if, say, in my 20s, I've been, you know, running, going to the gym, doing yoga, loads of HIIT stuff, how does my exercise look different when I'm in my sort of 20s, 30s, or early 30s, and then beyond? How does it differ?
So it doesn't have to look massively different. It just has to fit with where you are with regard to your stress levels and resilience. So if you're like a 5 a.m. workout bunny, and if you're feel okay when you do it, but then feel horrendous for the rest of the day, that's a massive cue to say, okay, we need to change the timing of this. And maybe the type of exercise is having too much of a strain on your adrenals. Also, when you get older, you want to be doing more weight bearing exercise, weightlifting to support with bone density. That's going to be important. So there'll be probably a shift away from continuous cardio to more weight bearing and weightlifting type exercise. That, you know, doing shorter and more efficient workouts might be more suited you know, at that point in our life. What was the other thing I was about to say? And yeah, and working out in line with your cycle. So if you are still cycling, knowing that doing the same workout day in, day out throughout your month isn't doing you any favors and isn't really working towards your goals. Getting a little bit more savvy and understanding how to do cycle aligned workouts is just going to be revolutionary. So understanding that, you know, we know our body uses protein differently in the first half of our cycle to the second half of our cycle. We know we have a greater need for carbohydrate in the second half of our cycle. You know, as we move towards our bleed, you know, we might want to just start dialing things down and do more dynamic, say, yoga type activities. And then whilst we're on our bleed, let's do more flexibility and mobility type work versus like pushing through to get like our best time. You know, the pushing through period, you know, getting PBs is probably more better suited for your late follicular phase just before ovulation and in and around that time. So I think just getting generally more savvy as to how you do your workouts not only makes them so much more fun, because you can have this beautiful cadence and review and everything, and you can see your holistic whole fitness changing over each month. But we're working with our bodies versus against them, because when we're doing the same thing day in, day out, there will be times in your cycle that you're working against your body.
Okay, so if a woman is no longer cycling, so she's not necessarily got that ebb and flow, or does she still have that ebb and flow?
It's a good question. So I do work with some women who are in their 60s and they don't cycle. They've been menopausal for many a year, but they still have an underlying cycle. They're still attuned, you know, where they have a day in the month when, and it's very consistent, when they kind of feel a little more emotional, for example. And it's incredible. We do, you know, when we look at their hormones, they are definitely menopausal. They've not got those fluctuations, but there is a natural cadence still. But to your point with regards to if you're not cycling, how do you tune in? I would still use, if you don't notice any difference, if you haven't been switched on to your cycle and you don't notice any underlying differences still, you know, use a moon cycle, and it just makes working out so much more fun. You know, when you can plot out over the course of, you know, 28, 30 days, okay, the first half or the first week, I'm going to be working on, you know, doing more HIIT type activities. Then I'm moving into doing more weight bearing exercises. Then I'm going to be doing some more steady state cardio. And then I'm going to be doing flexibility and mobility. And that adds so much more interest to our world, whether you're cycling or not. But yeah, if you're not cycling and you're definitely menopausal, you know, you don't have those physiological changes. So actually the types of workouts you're doing probably won't matter as much, but the most important thing is do what feels good for you. And if you're doing a workout and then, you know, 90 minutes later or even that afternoon you're feeling pretty rubbish, then you're not probably doing the right thing.
Yeah. I'm conscious that we're at 2:45, and I know you need to go at 3, don't you? So let me just check. I remember you did a post about what women should consider before considering going on to HRT. I don't know if we've covered that in the questions we've.
Yeah. So yeah, we've partly covered it. I think the main thing is, you know, first of all, if you're not hitting a brick wall, then, you know, because if you're hitting a brick wall and you're not coping and you need help, then, you know, HRT potentially will be the right thing for you. But if you're starting to experience symptoms and you know, the severity of them is getting worse, then before moving straight to HRT, first of all, look at that identity piece. Where are there kind of energy leaks and misalignment? Look at blood glucose, know what your bloods are. So are there any nutrient deficiencies? Quite often we work with women in their late 30s, early 40s who feel like they need to be on HRT because they've got no energy and they've got like heightened low mood at certain times of the month. And we see they've got super low B12. It might not be low on NHS ranges, but on functional ranges, it's low. They've got low folate and they might have kind of low iron markers. Now, it might not be flagging on NHS ranges because they use the disease ranges. You know, you're not in a state of anemia and you're not in a state of, you know, complete deficiency. but potentially if you carry on, you're going to get there. But we want to stop you from getting there. The reason you're feeling fatigued and having problems, say, processing hormones, is because you've got suboptimal levels across a few different markers. So just really getting savvy and understanding what's going on inside, getting curious what's going on inside. If you've experienced gut issues, let's experience what's going on in the gut, because that is a foundational piece. There's a lot of those things you can do before moving to HRT. You might not even need to move to HRT when you get on top of some of these pieces.
And are those nutritional deficiencies common in perimenopausal?
So it doesn't necessarily have to be linked with perimenopause, but we do see that a lot. It's probably more due to, gut health, slowly changes. I don't want to say deteriorates, but changes as we age and as our resilience wears down. Need for nutrients will change. Again, if we've been living in a constant state of go, of, fight and flight really for several years, that has a huge drain on the adrenals, that has a huge drain on nutrient reserves. If we're not eating nutrient dense foods, or we've got, blood glucose imbalances, all of these things will take their toll. So, whether someone's perimenopausal or not, depending obviously on age and what's going on, we quite often do see suboptimal blood results, which when you address them, just makes a world of difference.
So these women that you're working with that are in their 60s, have they been able, what's the best that you can hope for in terms of your energy levels? Or is it once you're past your 30s or whatever, you're never going to get back to a high level of resilience? Or
no, I mean, no, not at all. Like the women that I work with and the women that I know who are in their 60s have great energy and vitality. I think a lot of energy, physical energy work comes down to how you lead yourself, how you take on stress, and how you move stress through you. There's obviously the physical side of things with, how you like I keep coming back to blood glucose. That's a huge energy drain if you've got that wrong. Nutrient deficiencies, gut health is the foundation of energy. So there's, some of those things going on that will set you up or make it more difficult for you. But there's absolutely no reason why, once, when in your 50s and 60s onwards, for you not to wake up feeling alive, switched on, like fully energized.
okay. And then I'm going to try and make this the final question, and then we can find out how people can work with you and stuff. But if there's a woman, if someone is quite a few years postmenopausal, but still experiencing all the hot flashes and, menopausal symptoms, what's that likely to be? Because doesn't it get to a stage where it balances, or is supposed to balance out? So if you're still suffering years later,
so it will get to a place where it balances out. For some women it just takes longer, so in which case, again, obviously check you've got those basics in place. Are you supporting your body in that transition? It might be like stress is such a huge piece, and obviously, like we said, there's so many different types of stressors. There could be historic trauma that could be keeping something stuck, and that's having a significant impact on the adrenal system, which is then having an impact on how your body's able to adjust to the changes, in progesterone and estrogen and maybe testosterone as well, in quite a few cases. But it will balance itself out. If it's not balancing itself out, look for some of those fundamental pieces and see how you can help yourself there.
But at the end of the day, every woman is unique in her journey. And I was actually thinking about this. I'm probably going to put an age on myself now, but I consider you sort of like the Colombo of women's health. Like, she will find out what is wrong with you. So yeah, I guess there's it's not a question of what's normal and what's not, because it's different for every woman. Is that?
Yeah, so everyone's experience will be different. There's obviously a lot of commonality. So if you're, a lot of people are doing things that's not helping them, which is why they're experiencing symptoms, whether they're significant or mild. So addressing those first, that is quite common across all of us. We can all address those things, and we've talked about those today. But there will be small nuances where, Colombo needs to come in and take a closer look. And yeah, myself and my team get so geeky about that, looking at what's going on, what symptoms are you presenting with, how do they connect together? Whether we use functional testing to have a look at, like the Dutch test, to have a look how you're metabolizing different hormones, how your stress response looks throughout a day, and how that's influencing different systems in the body, or we do a stool test, or we do genetic testing. Now, whether we do that or not, we piece together, kind of really like get down into what are the root causes of these imbalances, and then be very specific in the targeted approach, whether that's some supplementation that helps change how you're metabolizing some hormones, or whether it's more general support. It really varies on the individual, but yeah, we can get into all the finer details to do the fine tuning.
Yeah. And there's so many different ways that women can work with you, because there's the whole Flourish thing, the Opal thing, Larks Labs. So tell us more about all the different ways.
Yeah, so yeah, all the different things. So for cycle optimization, understanding what's going on in your cycle, I've got a low cost monthly membership. That's a really nice place to start. And then really moving into Flourish is my group program that's all around energetic and hormonal mastery. So that's kind of like bringing it to life and personalizing it to you. So that moves you through an 8-week program. We then have Opal, that is a mastermind. So that's a combination of one-to-one support, as well as being in a group with women who are experiencing similar things in life. And then we have obviously private, just one-to-one. And then we have Lux Health, which is health concierge, and that's where we do everything for you. So that could be supporting you with all like the meal prep, or it could be working with a private chef, working alongside other health providers such as acupuncturists, dentists, setting up, if you travel a lot with work, liaising with airlines, liaising with hotels, conference venues, everything to do with wellness. We take it off your plate. We make you feel as good as possible, so you can just go out and do what you are here to do in the world. Yeah,
sounds great. Yeah, I've got all of your descriptions and where people can find you and everything, so that will go on the description under this video. Any final words for the women listening?
Any final words is just pause for a second and listen to what your body is telling you right now. Do you feel fatigued? What's your mood like? Are you hungry? Are you tired? Like, just listen to what she's telling you, and then think, how can I respond to this? Just start listening and responding, because your body is talking to you all the time. We just don't have time to listen to her. And that really is the first step, is just listening and responding.
Spot on, because I didn't listen to myself for years. Totally disconnected. Thank you so much. Really loved that interview. There's so much more I could ask, but I think that's some good timing. And I think we've got some really key points coming out of that people can really tune into. So thank you very, very, very much. I'm going to stop the recording now. And then please, but don't go away, so we can say goodbye off camera.
No problem.
Take care.
Bye. Thank you.